They were only 3 years old when she sold them. I watched my daughter accept $100,000 in cash and hand over my autistic grandsons like they were furniture. What I did next took 12 years, but when I finally found those boys, they were about to inherit the very company she'd built on their blood money. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I never thought I'd live to see the day when my own daughter would commit a crime so unthinkable that even now, at 70 years old, I still wake up in cold sweats remembering it. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought I knew about my daughter, Cassandra, and how two beautiful boys named Jasper and Silas came back into our lives to deliver the justice she never saw coming. It all started on a humid September evening in 2011 in Asheville, North Carolina. I was living in a small Victorian cottage on Montfort Avenue, the same house where I'd raised Cassandra alone after her father, my husband Thomas, died in a construction accident when she was just 7 years old. The insurance settlement had been modest, barely enough to cover the funeral and pay off our debts. After that, it was just the two of us against the world. I'd worked 2 jobs to make sure Cassandra never felt the weight of our poverty. During the day, I was a medical transcriptionist at Mission Hospital, typing up doctor's notes and surgical reports in a windless basement office. On weekends and evenings, I worked as a seamstress, taking in alterations and custom orders from the wealthy families up on Town Mountain. My fingers were constantly pricked with needle marks, my eyes strained from reading handwriting and stitching in dim light, but I never complained, not once. Cassandra had everything she needed. Not everything she wanted, we couldn't afford that, but everything essential. She went to public school but had tutors when she struggled with math. She wore hand-me-downs, but I altered them so perfectly that no one could tell. She dreamed of piano lessons, so I traded seamstress work with Mrs. Chen down the street who taught music. For 3 years, I hemmed Mrs. Chen's entire family's clothes in exchange for Cassandra's weekly lessons. And Cassandra thrived. She was brilliant, driven, hungry for success in a way that both impressed and frightened me. Even as a child, she talked about being rich, about never having to worry about money, about living in a house where the heat never got turned off in winter, and where dinner was sometimes just rice and canned vegetables. "I'm going to be somebody, Mom," she'd tell me, her green eyes fierce with determination. "I'm going to make so much money that you'll never have to work again." I'd hug her close and tell her I was already proud, that she was already somebody to me. But looking back now, I wonder if my sacrifices taught her the wrong lesson. Maybe instead of learning that love means giving everything for family, she learned that everything has a price, even people. Cassandra graduated valedictorian from Asheville High School in 1998. She got a full scholarship to Duke University, and I cried tears of joy at her graduation. This was it, the proof that all my sacrifices had been worth it. My daughter was going to have the opportunities I never had. She majored in business and computer science, 2 fields that were exploding with opportunity in the late 1990s. She'd come home during breaks talking about startups and IPOs and venture capital with an excitement I'd never seen in her before. The dot-com world fascinated her. The idea that you could build something from nothing and sell it for millions captivated her imagination. "It's all about timing and positioning, Mom," she'd explained to me over Christmas dinner in 2000, her eyes bright with ambition. "The right idea at the right moment can turn you into a millionaire overnight. You just have to be smart and ruthless enough to capitalize on it." "Ruthless?" I'd asked, uncomfortable with the word. "That's how winners think," she'd said, as if it were obvious. "Nice people finish last in business. You have to be willing to do what others won't." After graduation in 2002, she moved to Charlotte and started working for a tech consulting firm called Digital Innovations Group. She was making more money than I'd ever seen, nearly $65,000 to start.
Within 3 years, she was a senior consultant making 6 figures. She bought a BMW, a downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows, and wore designer suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage. I was proud, of course. How could I not be? My daughter had made it. She'd escaped the poverty that had defined my life. But there was something cold about her success, something that made me uneasy whenever I visited her in Charlotte. Her apartment was beautiful, but sterile. Everything was white or chrome or glass. There were no photographs, no sentimental objects, nothing that suggested a life beyond work and acquisition. "Don't you want to make it more homey?" I'd asked, looking around at the minimalist space. "This isn't a home, Mom. It's a launching pad. I'm not planning to stay in Charlotte long. This is just a stepping stone." Everything was a stepping stone for Cassandra. Nothing was valuable in itself, only for what it could lead to next.
In 2006, Cassandra met Garrett Sterling at a venture capital conference in Raleigh. He was 35, 10 years older than her, with silver-streaked dark hair and the kind of polished confidence that comes from old money and new success. His family owned Sterling Capital Partners, a venture capital firm that had been early investors in several major tech companies. Garrett himself was known in North Carolina business circles as a brilliant but cold dealmaker who could spot promising startups from a mile away and who never let sentiment interfere with profit. They started dating in March, were engaged by June, and married in September in a small ceremony at the Biltmore estate that cost more than I'd earned in 5 years. I was there, of course, wearing a dress I'd sewn myself from fabric Cassandra had reluctantly approved. Garrett's family treated me politely but distantly, like I was a curiosity rather than family. "She's very industrious," I overheard Garrett's mother, Patricia Sterling, say to another guest. The word dripped with condescension. I wasn't one of them, and they wanted me to know it. But Cassandra fit right in. She'd transformed herself completely, shedding every trace of her working-class background like a snake shedding skin. She spoke differently, dressed differently, even held her wine glass differently. When someone asked about her childhood, she gave vague answers about growing up in western North Carolina, without mentioning our shabby little cottage or my 2 jobs or the years we'd struggled. After the wedding, Cassandra and Garrett moved to a sprawling house in Myers Park, Charlotte's wealthiest neighborhood. The house had 6 bedrooms, a pool, and a 3-car garage. It was everything Cassandra had ever dreamed of. I thought marriage might soften her, might remind her that there were things more important than money and status. I was wrong. When Cassandra called me in October 2007 to tell me she was pregnant, I felt a surge of hope. Finally, I thought. Finally, she'll understand what really matters. Finally, she'll know the kind of love that transforms you, the love a mother has for her child. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, already imagining myself as a grandmother, planning all the things I'd do with this baby. "How are you feeling? Are you excited?" There was a pause. "It's twins, Mom." "Twins? Oh, Cassandra, that's doubly wonderful." "It's complicated," she said, her voice flat. "Garrett and I weren't planning on children yet. We're in the middle of launching a new fund. The timing is really bad." "Babies don't wait for perfect timing," I said gently. "They come when they're meant to come. You'll see, once they're born, you'll fall in love and nothing else will matter." "Right," she said, and I could hear her typing on her computer. She was probably working while we talked. "Listen, Mom, I need to go. Conference call in 5 minutes. I'll keep you posted." She hung up before I could say I loved her. The pregnancy was difficult. Cassandra had severe morning sickness for the first 4 months, and the twins were positioned in a way that caused her constant back pain. But she never slowed down. She worked 12-hour days right up until her water broke 6 weeks early while she was in a board meeting. Jasper Thomas Sterling and Silas James Sterling were born on March 15, 2008, at Carolina's Medical Center. Jasper came first, weighing 4 pounds 11 ounces. Silas followed 3 minutes later, weighing 4 pounds 8 ounces. They were tiny, fragile, with translucent skin and delicate features that broke my heart with their beauty.
I drove to Charlotte the moment Cassandra called, breaking every speed limit between Asheville and the hospital. When I got there, the boys were in the NICU, hooked up to monitors and feeding tubes. Cassandra was in a private recovery room, already on her laptop, already checking emails. "Cassandra," I said softly, sitting beside her bed, "don't you want to go see the babies?" "I've seen them," she replied without looking up. "They're sleeping. The nurses said they're stable." "But don't you want to hold them? To be near them?" She finally looked at me, and her eyes were empty. "Mom, they're premature. They need to stay in their incubators. I can't do anything for them right now. I might as well get some work done while I'm stuck here." I went to the NICU myself, stood beside those tiny isolates, and fell completely in love. Jasper had dark hair like Garrett's family, while Silas was fair like Cassandra. Both had gray-blue newborn eyes that seemed to look right through me. I reached through the portholes and touched their tiny, impossibly small hands, and when their tiny fingers curled around mine, I made them a silent promise. I would love them unconditionally, protect them fiercely, and be the grandmother they deserved. If only I'd known then how desperately they would need that protection. The boys spent 28 days in the NICU, 28 days of monitors and alarms, of weight checks and feeding schedules, of careful hope and constant anxiety. I stayed at a budget motel near the hospital, spending every possible moment with Jasper and Silas. I learned how to change their tiny diapers, how to feed them with special preemie bottles, how to hold them carefully to support their fragile necks and bodies. Cassandra visited twice a week, always dressed for work, always checking her phone. She'd stand beside the isolates for exactly 10 minutes, watching the boys with clinical detachment, then leave to get back to the office. "The doctor says they're doing well," she'd report to me, as if discussing a project status. "They're gaining weight appropriately, no major complications, should be discharged on schedule." "Cassandra," I said one afternoon, unable to hold back anymore, "these are your babies, your sons. Don't you want to spend time with them? Don't you want to bond with them?"
"I'm here, aren't I?" she snapped. "I come when I can. I have responsibilities, Mom. Garrett and I are in the middle of closing a major deal. I can't just abandon my work because the babies came early." "They're not the babies," I said, hearing my voice rise. "They're Jasper and Silas, your children. They need their mother." "They need their mother to secure their financial future," she countered coldly. "That's what I'm doing. Someone has to think practically." I wanted to argue, to make her understand, but I could see it was useless. Cassandra had already made her choice, and it wasn't her son's. Garrett came to the hospital even less frequently than Cassandra. I met him only 3 times during those 28 days. He'd stand awkwardly beside the isolates, looking uncomfortable and out of place, clearly eager to leave. "They're so small," he said once, as this were a defect rather than a natural result of premature birth. "They'll grow," I assured him. "Preemies often catch up to full-term babies within a year or 2. "If they develop normally," he said, and something about the way he said it made my skin prickle. It sounded less like concern and more like calculation. Coming home. When Jasper and Silas were finally discharged, Cassandra and Garrett hired a full-time nanny, a kind young woman from the Philippines named Isabel Cruz. She was warm and patient, and I liked her immediately. But it bothered me that Cassandra seemed to view Isabel as the primary caregiver, rather than as help. The boys' schedule, their care, their entire daily existence was delegated to Isabel, while Cassandra returned to work as if nothing had changed. I visited as often as I could, making the 3-hour drive from Asheville to Charlotte every weekend. I'd arrive Friday evening and leave Sunday night, spending every possible moment with Jasper and Silas. I'd give them bottles and change their diapers, read them board books they were too young to understand, sing them the same lullabies I'd sung to Cassandra decades ago.
The boys were good babies, but different from each other in ways that became more apparent as they grew. Jasper was the fussier of the two, crying more frequently, sleeping less soundly. Silas was calmer, but more distant, less responsive to voices and touch. Both were developing more slowly than the milestones in the baby books suggested they should. Have you talked to the pediatrician about their development? Jasper isn't babbling much, and Silas doesn't seem to respond when we call his name. Dr. Morrison says some babies develop more slowly, especially preemies, Cassandra replied dismissively. They'll catch up. But they didn't catch up. By their first birthday, the differences were more pronounced. Neither boy was saying any words. Jasper still wasn't making consistent eye contact. Silas had started engaging in repetitive behaviors, spinning the wheels on his toy cars over and over instead of playing with them. Cassandra, I really think you should get them evaluated, I pressed during one visit. Early intervention can make a huge difference if there's a developmental delay. They're fine, Mom, she snapped. Stop looking for problems where there aren't any. You're being paranoid. But I wasn't being paranoid. I'd worked in medical transcription for 30 years. I'd typed countless pediatric neurology reports. I recognized the signs of autism spectrum disorder, even if I desperately wanted to be wrong. The diagnosis. The diagnosis came just after the boys' 18th month checkup. Dr. Natalie Morrison, their pediatrician, had referred them to Dr. Raymond Patel, a developmental pediatrician at Levine Children's Hospital. The appointment took 3 hours: observation, testing, evaluation, questions upon questions about the boys' behaviors and development. I went with Cassandra and Garrett to that appointment, sitting in the cramped evaluation room while Dr. Patel watched Jasper and Silas play with specialized toys, noting their responses and reactions with clinical precision. When the boys were taken to a play area with a staff member, Dr. Patel sat down from us with the gravity of someone delivering difficult news. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, Mrs. Whitmore, he began, his voice gentle but direct. Based on today's evaluation and the developmental history you've provided, both Jasper and Silas meet the diagnostic criteria for autism spectrum disorder. The room seemed to compress around us. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, even though I'd suspected this for months. Hearing it officially, hearing those words applied to my grandsons, made it devastatingly real. Both of them? Cassandra asked, her voice strained. You're sure? Yes, Dr. Patel confirmed. They're both showing significant deficits in social communication, restricted interests, and repetitive behaviors. On the spectrum, I would classify them both as moderate to severe at this point, though I want to emphasize that early intervention can make a substantial difference in their long-term outcomes. Garrett leaned forward, his expression cold and calculating. What does that mean for their future? Will they be able to function independently? Will they be able to work, live on their own? Dr. Patel hesitated. It's impossible to predict with certainty at this age. Some children with autism make tremendous progress with therapy and intervention. Others will require varying levels of support throughout their lives. What I can tell you is that the next few years are crucial. Intensive early intervention, speech therapy, occupational therapy, behavioral therapy can significantly improve their skills and quality of life.
How intensive? Cassandra asked. How much time are we talking about? Ideally, 25 to 40 hours per week of structured intervention, Dr. Patel replied. Applied behavior analysis, speech therapy, occupational therapy, developmental preschool programs. It's a significant commitment, but the research clearly shows that intensive early intervention produces the best outcomes. And the cost? Garrett's question was sharp, businesslike. Dr. Patel looked uncomfortable. It varies significantly depending on insurance coverage and available programs. Many insurance plans cover some portion of autism therapies now. There are also state-funded programs through the North Carolina Infant-Toddler Program. But yes, out-of-pocket costs can be substantial, potentially tens of thousands per year per child. I watched the color drain from Cassandra's face, not from grief or fear for her children, but from something else, something that looked like resentment. "What if we don't do the intensive therapy?" she asked. "What if we just do what we can?" Dr. Patel's expression hardened slightly. "Then you'd be significantly limiting your son's potential for development and independence." "Mrs. Sterling, I can't stress enough how critical early intervention is. The brain has tremendous plasticity at this age. What we do in the next 2 to 3 years can literally change the trajectory of their entire lives." "Of course," Garrett said smoothly, standing up. "We'll do whatever's necessary. Thank you, Dr. Patel. Can we get copies of today's evaluation to take with us?" As we left the hospital, none of us spoke. We walked to the parking garage in heavy silence, the afternoon sun harsh and unforgiving. When we reached their cars, Cassandra's BMW and Garrett's Mercedes, Cassandra finally turned to me. "This changes everything," she said, and there was something in her voice that frightened me. Not sadness, not determination to help her sons, something colder, more calculated. "What doesn't change is that they're your children," I said firmly. "It doesn't change that they need you." "They need money, Mom," she shot back. "Money for therapists and specialists and God knows what else. And all of that is going to come at the expense of everything Garrett and I have been building." "Cassandra!" "I need to think," she interrupted. "I need to process this. I'll call you later." She got in her car and drove away without saying goodbye, without asking if I wanted a ride back to her house to spend more time with the boys. Garrett lingered for a moment, studying me with cold gray eyes. "You should prepare yourself, Eleanor. Garrett and I have a lot of decisions to make about our future. Not all of them will be easy." "Those boys are your future," I said, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. "They're your sons." "They're a liability," he replied, and the casual cruelty of it took my breath away. "A very expensive liability that we didn't plan for and can't afford if we want to maintain our lifestyle and business trajectory." He got in his Mercedes and drove away, leaving me alone in the parking garage, understanding for the first time just how much danger my grandsons were in. The deteriorating months. The months following the diagnosis were a nightmare. Cassandra and Garrett did enroll the boys in some therapy programs, just enough to avoid looking completely negligent, but far less than Dr. Patel had recommended. Jasper and Silas received maybe 10 hours of intervention per week instead of the prescribed 25 to 40. And I could see the resentment building every time I visited. Cassandra looked at her sons with barely concealed frustration. Garrett avoided them entirely, working longer hours, traveling more frequently for business. Isabel, the nanny, was doing her best, but she wasn't trained in autism intervention. She loved the boys, that was clear, but she didn't know how to help them develop the skills they needed. I started coming to Charlotte more often, sometimes twice a week, desperately trying to fill the void their parents were creating. I'd take the boys to their therapy appointments, work with them at home using techniques I'd researched online, love them with every fiber of my being. But it wasn't enough. I could see them slipping further behind, becoming more isolated in their own worlds. Jasper developed severe anxiety, crying and rocking whenever his routine changed. Silas stopped responding to his name almost entirely, preferring to line up his toys in precise rows rather than engage with people. And worst of all, I could see Cassandra pulling away from them completely. She'd come home from work and go straight to her office, avoiding the boys. She'd make excuses not to go to their therapy appointments, sending Isabel or me instead. "They're not getting better,"
she said to me one evening when I'd come for a weekend visit. We were standing in her kitchen, all granite and stainless steel, cold and perfect, and I could hear the boys upstairs with Isabel, Jasper crying through another meltdown. "They're making progress," I insisted, though it was slower than I'd hoped. "Jasper is starting to use sign language, and Silas—" "They're never going to be normal," Cassandra interrupted, her voice flat and emotionless. "They're never going to go to regular school or have friends or live independently. They're going to need care for the rest of their lives, and that care is going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars."
"They're your children," I said, my voice breaking. "They deserve your love regardless of what they cost or how much care they need." She laughed bitterly. "That's easy for you to say. You're not the one whose entire future is being derailed by them. Do you know what it's like to have everyone look at your children and see defects? To have people pity you? To know that your life is never going to be what you planned?" "I know what it's like to love my child unconditionally," I shot back, "something you apparently never learned." Her face hardened. "Get out." "Cassandra!" I said, "Get out. Go back to Asheville, go back to your shabby little house and your martyrdom, but don't come here and judge me when you have no idea what I'm dealing with." I left that night, but I called Isabel the next day to check on the boys. "They're okay," she assured me in her soft accent. "But Mrs. Sterling and Mr. Sterling, they are very unhappy. They fight all the time now, about the boys, about money. I think," she paused, clearly uncomfortable, "I think they want to send the boys away somewhere." My blood ran cold. "Away where?" "I don't know. I heard them talking about residential programs, special schools, places where children with autism live full-time. Mrs. Sterling, she says she can't do this anymore." I thanked Isabel and hung up, my hands trembling with fear and rage. They were going to institutionalize Jasper and Silas. They were going to send their 3-year-old sons away because caring for them was inconvenient. I had to do something. But what? They were the parents. I had no legal rights. I couldn't just take the boys, and Cassandra would never voluntarily give them to me. All I could do was visit more frequently, document everything I saw, and pray that Cassandra would come to her senses before she did something we'd all regret. I should have known better. Cassandra had already made her choice, and it was so much worse than I could have imagined. The phone call. On August 28, 2011, Cassandra called me with an unusual request. "Mom," she said, her voice strangely bright, artificially cheerful, "Garrett and I are going on a business trip. We'll be gone for 3 weeks, maybe a month. Can you take the boys?" I'd been hoping for an opportunity like this, a chance to have Jasper and Silas with me for an extended period where I could give them the consistency and love they desperately needed. "Of course," I said immediately. "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning, early. I'll bring the boys to Asheville tonight." Something in her voice made my skin prickle with unease. "Is everything all right, Cassandra? You sound strange." "Everything's fine," she said, too quickly. "Better than fine, actually. This trip could be huge for our business, life-changing. Garrett has some investors in Mexico City who are very interested in our new fund. We need to go meet them in person, close a deal." "Mexico City? That's quite a far journey for a business trip." "It's where the money is, Mom," she replied, and I could hear her moving around, the sound of things being packed. "Look, I need to finish getting ready. I'll be there around 7 with the boys and their things." "Cassandra, wait," but she'd already hung up. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. I cleared out my small spare room, setting up the portable cribs I'd bought months ago for the boys' visits. I went to the grocery store and bought all their favorite foods, Silas's chicken nuggets and applesauce, Jasper's particular bird of graham crackers. I dug out their favorite books and toys from the closet where I kept them.
By the time Cassandra's BMW pulled into my driveway at 6:47 p.m., I'd created a safe, loving space for my grandsons. Jasper and Silas tumbled out of the car the moment Cassandra opened the back doors, running to me with squeals of excitement. I scooped them both up, breathing in their little boy scent of baby shampoo and graham crackers, feeling their small arms wrap around my neck. "Gamma, Gamma," Jasper said, one of his clear words. Silas didn't speak, but he pressed his face against my shoulder, and I felt his small body relax against me. They felt safe with me. They felt loved. Cassandra carried in 2 small suitcases and set them on my porch without coming inside. "That should be everything," she said. "Clothes, their medications, comfort items." Isabel put together a schedule of their routines. It's in the green folder in the larger suitcase. "When exactly will you be back?" I asked, studying her face. She looked tense, excited, almost manic. 3 weeks, maybe 4, depends on how the negotiations go. I'll text you updates." "Cassandra," I said carefully, shifting the weight of the boys on my hips, "this is a long time to be away from them. Are you sure you need to be gone that long?" "I'm sure," she said firmly. "This is important, Mom. This is our future." "They're your future," I corrected, nodding at the boys. Something flickered across her face. Guilt? Sadness? Regret? Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, determined expression I'd come to know so well. "Take good care of them," she said, already walking back to her car. "I'll be in touch." "Cassandra, wait. Don't you want to say a proper goodbye? You'll be gone for weeks." She paused at the car door, her back to me. For a long moment she stood there, frozen. Then she turned around, walked back to where I stood with the boys, and knelt down. "Be good for Grandma," she said to Jasper and Silas, but she didn't touch them, didn't hug them, didn't kiss their cheeks. "I'll see you soon." "Mama," Jasper said, reaching for her. She stood up quickly, stepping back. "I have to go, long drive back to Charlotte." "You're not staying the night?" I asked, surprised. "It's already getting dark." She was lying. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she couldn't quite meet my gaze, but I didn't know what she was lying about, and I didn't know how to call her on it without starting an argument in front of the boys.
"All right," I said quietly. "Travel safe. Call me when you land in Mexico City so I know you arrived safely." "I will. Bye, Mom." She got in her BMW and drove away, and I stood on my porch holding my grandsons, watching her taillights disappear down Montfort Avenue, not knowing that I'd just witnessed my daughter abandoning her children for the last time. Those were the last words she spoke to me in person for 12 years. The first 3 days after Cassandra left were blissfully peaceful. Jasper and Silas settled into my cottage with surprising ease, almost as if they felt safer here than in their own home. We established routines: breakfast at 8, playtime in the backyard, lunch at noon, quiet time in the afternoon, dinner at 6, bath time at 7:30, stories and bed by 8:30. The boys thrived on predictability, on knowing what came next. In Charlotte, their schedules had been chaotic, dictated by Cassandra and Garrett's work demands and social obligations. Here, in my small Victorian cottage on Montfort Avenue, we had structure, consistency, and most importantly, love. Jasper's meltdowns decreased significantly. Without the constant tension of his parents' home, without the anxiety of not knowing what would happen next, he became calmer, more regulated. He started using more sign language, the few signs I'd been teaching him during my visits. More, eat, sleep, book. Simple words that opened tiny windows into his needs and wants. Silas remained more distant, more locked in his own world, but even he seemed more at ease. He'd line up his toy cars on my living room floor for hours, occasionally glancing up at me with those serious gray-blue eyes, as if checking that I was still there, still present, still safe.
I called Cassandra on the third day, wanting to update her on how well the boys were doing. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again that evening. Voicemail again. I sent a text. Boys are doing great. Jasper asked for you at bedtime. Call when you can. Love, Mom. No response. By the end of the first week, I'd called Cassandra 17 times and sent 9 text messages. Not a single response. I tried Garrett's number next. It rang twice and then went to a recording saying the number was no longer in service. That's when the first tendrils of real fear began to wrap around my heart. I called Isabel, the nanny, hoping she might have heard from Cassandra or know how to reach her. "Mrs. Whitmore?" Isabel said, her voice strained and worried. "Mrs. Sterling? She terminated my employment. She sent me an email 3 days ago saying my services were no longer needed. She paid me through the end of the month and said she'd send a reference letter, but that was all. No explanation, no thank you for 3 years of work, just goodbye." Did she say anything about the boys? About when she'd be back? Nothing. The email was very short, very cold. I tried to call her to make sure this wasn't a mistake, but her number doesn't work anymore, and Mr. Sterling's number also doesn't work. It's like they disappeared. After I hung up with Isabel, I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe they'd changed their numbers for business reasons. Maybe they were in Mexico with poor cell service. Maybe they were just busy with their meetings and would call when they had time. But even as I tried to rationalize it, I knew something was deeply wrong. Cassandra was many things: cold, ambitious, selfish, but she'd never been completely unreachable. She'd always responded eventually, even if it took days. This total silence was different. By the middle of the second week, my worry had transformed into full-blown panic. I'd called every number I had for Cassandra and Garrett, home, work, cell phones, all disconnected or unanswered. I'd sent dozens of emails and text messages. Nothing. I even called Digital Innovations Group, the consulting firm Cassandra had worked for before starting her own ventures. Maybe old colleagues would know something. Cassandra Sterling? The human resources representative sounded confused. She left Digital Innovations Group in 2006, over 5 years ago. We don't have any current contact information for her. What about her own business, Victor Tech Consulting? She started her own firm after she left your company. I'm sorry, ma'am, I wouldn't have information about that. Have you tried searching online for her business contact information?
I had. I'd spent hours searching online for any trace of Cassandra or Garrett. Victor Tech Consulting's website was gone, replaced by a domain parking page. Cassandra's LinkedIn profile had been deleted. Her Facebook account, which she'd rarely used anyway, was deactivated. Garrett's professional profiles had all disappeared. It was as if they'd systematically erased their digital presence. By the 14th day, I knew I needed help. This wasn't just a communication problem or a business trip gone long. This was abandonment, possibly worse. I drove into downtown Asheville to the police station on Patton Avenue, bringing with me copies of Cassandra's last text messages, documentation of my failed attempts to reach her, and photos of the boys to prove I was their grandmother. Officer Marcus Thompson listened to my story with patient sympathy, taking notes as I explained everything: the diagnosis, Cassandra's deteriorating relationship with her sons, the sudden request to take them, the 3 weeks of complete silence. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said gently when I finished, "I understand this is distressing, but I'm not sure this constitutes a criminal matter. Your daughter left her children with you, their grandmother, with your consent. That's not abandonment in a legal sense." "But she's disappeared. She won't return my calls. She's terminated her nanny. She and her husband have quit their jobs and erased their online presence. This isn't normal." "I agree it's concerning," Officer Thompson said, "but she's an adult. Adults are allowed to change jobs, change phone numbers, and choose not to communicate with family members. As long as she's not in danger and hasn't committed a crime, there's not much we can do." What about the children? She's their mother. She has responsibilities. You said she left them with you voluntarily, correct? She didn't abandon them on your doorstep or leave them in an unsafe situation. From a legal standpoint, she arranged childcare with a family member. For 3 weeks. It's been 2 weeks already, and I haven't heard a word from her. Officer Thompson's expression softened with genuine sympathy. I understand your frustration, Mrs. Whitmore. Let me file a missing persons report. We can document your concerns and her lack of communication, but I want to be honest with you. Unless we find evidence that she's in danger or that a crime has been committed, this will likely be classified as a low-priority case. So you're telling me there's nothing you can do? I'm telling you that I'll document everything, and if she doesn't contact you by the end of the 3 weeks she mentioned, come back and we'll reassess the situation. In the meantime, if you discover any evidence of criminal activity, fraud, theft, child abandonment with intent to permanently relinquish custody, bring that to us immediately. I left the police station feeling helpless and afraid. Jasper and Silas were at home with my neighbor, Ruth Kowalski, a retired teacher who'd been helping me with childcare during my work hours. The boys were safe, cared for, loved, but they weren't mine, not legally, not if Cassandra decided to come back and take them. And if she didn't come back, what then? How long could I care for them without legal custody? What if they needed medical care and I didn't have the authority to consent to treatment? What if Cassandra had truly abandoned them? On day 20, just as I was beginning to think I'd never hear from Cassandra again, my phone buzzed with an incoming text message. My hands shook as I grabbed it, hope and dread warring in my chest. The message was from Cassandra's number. Change of plans. Business situation more complex than expected. Need to stay in Mexico longer. Keep boys for now. Will contact when return date is confirmed. I stared at the message, reading it over and over. It was so cold, so detached. No apology for the silence, no questions about how the boys were doing, no expression of love or concern, just a brief notification that her business situation required more time. I called the number immediately. It rang 3 times and went to voicemail. A generic automated message, not Cassandra's voice. I left a message. Cassandra, I got your text. I need to talk to you about the boys. They're asking for you. I need to know when you're coming back. Please call me. No response. I sent a text. How much longer? The boys need their mother. This isn't fair to them. No response. Another text. Are you safe? Are you and Garrett okay? I'm worried about you. No response. I tried a different approach. The boys are running low on their vitamins, and Jasper needs a refill for his anxiety medication. Where should I take them? Which pharmacy? I need insurance information. This time, I got a response within an hour. Handle it yourself. Use your own insurance or pay out of pocket. I'll reimburse you. The casual dismissal of it made me want to throw my phone across the room. Handle it yourself, as if I were the parent, as if these were my responsibilities, not hers. I called my friend Patricia Langford, a family law attorney I'd known for 20 years. We'd met when her mother was in the hospital where I worked, and we'd stayed in touch over the years. Eleanor, I need legal advice, I said when she answered. It's about my grandsons. I explained everything, the diagnosis, Cassandra's deteriorating relationship with her sons, the sudden request to take them, the 3 weeks of complete silence. Patricia listened carefully, asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Eleanor, she said finally, this is a complicated situation. Technically, Cassandra has left the children with you, a family member, with your consent. She's maintaining some contact, even if it's minimal. From a legal standpoint, she hasn't abandoned them in a way that would trigger immediate state intervention. But she's been gone for 3 weeks. She won't return my calls. She's terminated her nanny. She and her husband have quit their jobs and erased their online presence. This isn't normal. I agree it's concerning, Patricia said, but she's an adult. Adults are allowed to change jobs, change phone numbers, and choose not to communicate with family members. As long as she's not in danger and hasn't committed a crime, there's not much we can do. I know, and I agree it's deeply concerning. But here's the reality. Parental rights are incredibly strong. Even parents who are neglectful or absent retain their legal rights, unless those rights are formally terminated by a court, and that's an extremely high bar to clear. So what can I do? For now, continue caring for the boys and document everything. Every text message, every attempt to contact her, every expense you incur. If she continues this pattern, if she's gone for months with minimal contact, you could potentially file for emergency custody based on abandonment. But you'd need to prove that she's not just away on an extended trip, but has actually abandoned them with no intention of returning. How long would that take? Months, potentially, and she could fight it. If she shows up and wants them back, she has every legal right to take them, unless you can prove she's unfit. She is unfit, I said, my voice rising. She doesn't love them. She resents them because they're autistic. She looks at them like they're burdens. Eleanor, Patricia said gently, I believe you, but feeling burdened by special needs children isn't illegal. Not loving your children the way they deserve isn't grounds for termination of parental rights. The bar is abuse or severe neglect, and from what you've described, she's avoiding them, not actively harming them. So she can just leave them with me indefinitely? No contact? No support? No accountability? If you're willing to care for them, then yes, essentially. The system is designed to keep families together, to give parents every opportunity to maintain relationships with their children. It's not designed to protect grandparents from being put in impossible positions. I felt tears burning my eyes. They're going to ask for her. Jasper already does, every night. He asks where Mama is, when she's coming home. What am I supposed to tell him? Tell him she's working and she'll come when she can, Patricia suggested. 3-year-olds don't have a strong concept of time. As long as they're happy and secure with you, they'll adjust. And if she never comes back? Then, eventually, we file for custody based on abandonment. But Eleanor, I need you to understand, that could take a year or more, and it's an emotionally and financially draining process. Courts don't like taking children from their parents. We'd need overwhelming evidence of unfitness, not just absence. After I hung up with Patricia, I sat in my small kitchen and cried. Not just for the boys. Not just for the impossible situation, but for the death of the dream that Cassandra would somehow become the mother her sons deserved. On day 23, I received another text from Cassandra. Situation still unresolved. Stay with you for now. We'll update when timeline is clearer. This time, I didn't respond. I didn't call, I didn't beg her to come home or explain herself. Instead, I opened my laptop and started searching for answers myself. I began with property records. Cassandra and Garrett's house in Myers Park, Charlotte, the beautiful 6-bedroom mansion where they'd lived for 5 years, was listed as sold. The sale had closed on August 15th, 2 weeks before Cassandra had brought the boys to me. They'd sold their house before the business trip. They'd already been planning to leave. Next, I searched for Victor Tech Consulting, Cassandra's business. The company had been dissolved in June, 3 months ago. All assets liquidated, all contracts terminated, all employees let go. Garrett's resignation from Sterling Capital Partners had been announced in late July, described in business news as stepping down to pursue other ventures. They'd been methodically closing down their lives in Charlotte for months, preparing for something, and they waited until the last possible moment to hand off the boys to me. I called Sterling Capital Partners again, this time asking to speak to Garrett's father, Harrison Sterling. I'm sorry, ma'am, but Mr. Harrison Sterling doesn't take unsolicited calls. This is regarding his grandsons. It's a family emergency.
A long pause. "Please hold." 5 minutes later, a man's deep, cultured voice came on the line. "This is Harrison Sterling. Who am I speaking with?" "Mr. Sterling, this is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm Cassandra's mother and grandmother to Jasper and Silas." "I'm aware who you are, Mrs. Whitmore. What is this about?" The coldness in his voice made my skin crawl. "I'm trying to reach Garrett and Cassandra. They've been gone for 3 weeks and won't return my calls. The boys are asking for their parents. I need to know when they're coming back." Another pause. When Harrison spoke again, his voice was ice. "Mrs. Whitmore, my son made certain choices that I and my family do not support. He has been removed from Sterling Capital Partners and from the family trust. I have no contact information for him, nor do I wish to have any. As for those children, they are not my concern." "They're your grandsons." "They are the children of a son who has disappointed me greatly and a daughter-in-law I never approved of. I suggest you contact the authorities if you believe they've been abandoned. Good day, Mrs. Whitmore." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there stunned by his cruelty, understanding now why Garrett had been so cold toward the boys. He'd learned it from his father. The Sterling family didn't want children who weren't perfect, who couldn't carry on their legacy of success and sophistication. But the conversation had given me one crucial piece of information. Garrett had been cut off from his family money. That explained part of why Cassandra and Garrett might have needed to find another source of income, another way to maintain their lifestyle. What it didn't explain was where they had gone or why they had abandoned their sons.
I hired a private investigator the next day. His name was Marcus Chen, a former police detective who now ran a small investigation firm in downtown Asheville. His office was above a coffee shop on Lexington Avenue, a cramped space filled with filing cabinets and old coffee cups. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, shaking my hand with a firm grip, "please sit down. Tell me what you need." I explained everything: the diagnosis, the abandonment, the sold house, the dissolved business, the disconnected phone numbers, the cryptic text messages. Marcus took notes steadily, his face impassive. When I finished, he looked up at me with dark, serious eyes. "This sounds like people who are either running from something or towards something very specific. The level of planning you're describing, selling property, dissolving businesses, cutting ties with family, that's not impulse, that's strategy. Can you find them?" "I can try, but I need to be honest with you. If they don't want to be found, if they're using false names or staying off the grid, it could be very difficult and expensive. My rate is $150 an hour plus expenses." I thought about my savings, the modest amount I'd managed to put away over 40 years of working 2 jobs. It wouldn't last long at $150 an hour, but I had to know the truth. "Do it," I said. "Find them." Marcus Chen was good at his job. Within a week, he'd uncovered information that made my blood run cold. We met at a diner on Patton Avenue, sitting in a back booth where we could talk privately. Marcus had a thick folder in front of him, and his expression told me I wasn't going to like what I was about to hear. "Mrs. Whitmore," he began, sliding the folder across the table, "your daughter and son-in-law didn't go to Mexico City for business meetings. They went there to meet with a couple named Eduardo and Carmen Martinez." "Who are they?" "Wealthy industrialists from Guadalajara. They own several manufacturing companies in Mexico and have significant real estate holdings. They're also," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "they're known in certain circles as people who facilitate private adoptions." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Adoptions? Illegal adoptions, to be specific. Wealthy couples who can't have children or who've been rejected by legitimate adoption agencies. People willing to pay large sums of money for healthy children, no questions asked. I couldn't breathe.
Are you telling me that Cassandra and Garrett tried to sell Jasper and Silas? Marcus's expression was grim. According to the email correspondence I was able to recover, and I should mention that what I did to get these emails was not strictly legal, so they wouldn't be admissible in court. Yes, Cassandra and Garrett had been in contact with the Martinez family for approximately 8 months. They'd been negotiating a private adoption arrangement. He pulled out printed copies of emails, and I forced myself to read them despite the nausea rising in my throat. The first email, dated January 2011, "We have twin boys, 3 years old, healthy and well cared for. We're interested in exploring adoption options for both children as a set." Another, from March, "The boys have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, but it's mild and manageable with proper intervention. They're affectionate, intelligent children who would thrive in the right environment." "Mild?" I said, my voice shaking. "Dr. Patel said they were moderate to severe." "She was lying to make them more appealing," Marcus said quietly. I continued reading, my horror growing with each email. By June, they were discussing price: $50,000 per child, $100,000 total, wire transfer to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The final emails from late August detailed the logistics. Cassandra and Garrett would bring the boys to Mexico City. The exchange would happen at a private location. The Martinez family would take the boys across the border into Guatemala, where they owned a vacation property, and from there, the trail would disappear. But then, something had gone wrong. The last few emails showed the deal falling apart. The Martinez family had hired a pediatric specialist to evaluate the boys before the exchange, and the specialist had reported that the autism was far more severe than Cassandra had disclosed. The Martinez family felt deceived and wanted to back out of the arrangement. Cassandra's responses grew increasingly desperate. She offered to reduce the price, offered to provide documentation of all the boys' therapy and medical care, offered to guarantee certain outcomes. But the Martinez family was done. They wanted their deposit back, $40,000 they'd already wired to Cassandra and Garrett's offshore account. The final email, dated September 7th, was from the Martinez family's lawyer, threatening legal action if the money wasn't returned within 30 days. I sat back in the booth, feeling like I might vomit. My daughter had tried to sell her children. She'd lied about their condition, negotiated a price, and planned to hand them over to strangers in a foreign country where they'd disappear forever. And when the sale fell through, she'd simply abandoned them with me. "There's more," Marcus said, and I didn't know how there could possibly be more. After the deal collapsed, Cassandra and Garrett disappeared, but they didn't go into hiding. They went to Austin, Texas, where they've started a new life. He pulled out more documents, property records showing a house purchased in Austin under Garrett's name, business registration for a new company called Apex Innovations, filed in September with Cassandra listed as CEO. "How did they pay for all this if they had to return the deposit money?" I asked. "They didn't return it. They kept it. The Martinez family's lawyer filed a lawsuit, but Cassandra and Garrett used shell companies and offshore accounts to hide the assets. They've been in a legal dispute for the past month, but they're fighting it from Austin while building their new business." I stared at the photographs Marcus had included, recent pictures of Cassandra and Garrett at what looked like a tech industry event in Austin. They were smiling, dressed expensively, looking successful and unburdened. They'd moved on. They'd started over. They'd built a new life as if Jasper and Silas had never existed. "What about the boys?" I whispered. "Did they tell anyone about them?" Marcus's expression grew even grimmer. "According to social media posts and professional profiles I found, Cassandra has told people in Austin that she had twins who died shortly after birth. She's playing the tragic mother who lost her children.
The cruelty of it took my breath away. She hadn't just abandoned Jasper and Silas, she'd killed them off in her new narrative, turned them into a sympathetic backstory to garner pity and attention. "Mrs. Whitmore," Marcus said gently, "I need to ask you something important. What do you want to do with this information?" I looked at him, this stranger who'd uncovered my daughter's monstrous secret, and I felt something harden inside me, something cold and determined and absolutely certain. "I want to destroy her," I said quietly. "I want her to face consequences for what she tried to do. I want those boys to grow up knowing that someone fought for them, that someone held her accountable." "That's going to be difficult," Marcus warned. "She didn't succeed in selling them. A good lawyer could argue that she was just exploring adoption options, that she changed her mind, that she left them with family while she got her life together. The emails are damning but were obtained illegally, and proving intent to permanently abandon them rather than just leaving them temporarily with you could be challenging. But it's possible? Maybe, if we can find more evidence, if we can prove a pattern of abuse or neglect, if we can demonstrate that she never intended to return for them." He paused. "And if you're willing to take custody of the boys permanently, which could mean a long legal battle if she decides to fight it." I thought about Jasper and Silas, asleep in their borrowed cribs in my spare room. I thought about the way Jasper had started sleeping through the night for the first time in months because he felt safe here. I thought about how Silas had begun making eye contact more frequently, responding to his name, engaging with the world around him because he wasn't constantly anxious and overstimulated. They were thriving without their parents. They were better off without Cassandra and Garrett's cold neglect. "I'll take them," I said. "I'll raise them, and I'll make sure Cassandra pays for what she tried to do." Marcus reached across the table and shook my hand. "Then let's get to work." The next steps. Over the following weeks, Marcus and I built our case methodically. We started with Isabel Cruz, the nanny Cassandra had abruptly fired. Isabel agreed to meet us at a coffee shop in Charlotte, and what she told us was damning. "Mrs. Sterling, she was never a mother to those boys," Isabel said, her English accented but clear. "From the day I started working for them when the babies came home from the hospital, she treated them like furniture, something she had to have because that's what wealthy people do, but not something she wanted." "Can you give me specific examples?" Marcus asked, recording the conversation with Isabel's permission. "So many examples," Isabel said, her eyes sad. "So she would come home from work and go straight to her office without even looking at the boys. When they cried, she would get angry, tell me to make them stop. When they needed her, when Jasper would have a meltdown, or when Silas needed comfort, she would leave the room. She couldn't stand to be near them." "What about after the autism diagnosis?" I asked. Isabel's expression darkened. "After that, it was worse, much worse. She looked at them like they were broken, like they had failed her somehow. I heard her on the phone once, talking to someone. I think it was Mr. Sterling, saying that the diagnosis had ruined everything, that they should have known better to have children." "Did she ever hurt them? Physically harm them?" "Not that I saw, but she neglected them. She would forget to tell me about doctor's appointments. She wouldn't come to therapy sessions, even when the therapists specifically asked to talk to her. She spent money on herself, on clothes and vacations and cars, but complained about every dollar spent on the boys' care." Marcus took extensive notes while Isabel spoke. We spent 2 hours with her, and by the end, I had a clear picture of just how unfit Cassandra had been as a mother, even before she'd tried to sell her children. Next, we interviewed Dr. Raymond Patel, the developmental pediatrician who diagnosed the boys. He was cautious in what he could say due to doctor-patient confidentiality, but he confirmed several key facts.
I can tell you that I recommended intensive early intervention for both children, he said carefully. At least 25 to 40 hours per week of structured therapy. And I can confirm that based on the boys' subsequent appointments and therapy reports, they were receiving far less than the recommended level of intervention. Did you ever express concern about this to the parents? I expressed it repeatedly, both in writing and in person. I documented my concerns about insufficient therapeutic support in the medical record. Can we get copies of those records? With Mrs. Whitmore's consent as the boy's current caregiver, yes, though you may need a court order for complete access. We also tracked down 3 therapists who'd worked with Jasper and Silas. All 3 confirmed similar patterns: missed appointments, lack of parental involvement, insufficient home reinforcement of therapeutic techniques. The boys could have made much more progress if their parents had been engaged, one speech therapist told us. But Mrs. Sterling rarely attended sessions, and when she did, she spent the whole time on her phone. She never practiced the techniques at home. It was clear the boys weren't a priority for her. Marcus also hired a tech specialist who managed to recover more deleted emails and social media messages from Cassandra's old accounts. What we found was a pattern of coldness towards her children that went back to their birth. Messages to friends complaining about how the boys had ruined her body and destroyed her career trajectory. Posts in private Facebook groups where she called them burdens and asked if anyone else regretted having children. Emails to Garrett discussing how much money they were wasting on therapy and whether it was worth the investment. Every piece of evidence painted a picture of a woman who had never wanted her children, who had seen them as obstacles to the life she wanted, who had been looking for a way out long before she'd contacted the Martinez family. By mid-October, 6 weeks after Cassandra had dropped off the boys, we had a substantial case file. But we were missing one crucial element: proof that Cassandra had no intention of returning for the boys. We need to prove abandonment with intent, Patricia Langford explained when I met with her to review our evidence. It's not enough to show she was a bad mother. We need to prove she deliberately abandoned them permanently, not just temporarily. She sold the house, dissolved her business, moved to another state, and started a new life telling people her children are dead. I said, "Isn't that enough?" It helps, but a good defense attorney could argue that she needed a fresh start and was planning to send for the boys once she got established. We need something that shows she never intended to come back for them. That something came in late October in the form of another text message from Cassandra. Situation complicated. Better for boys to stay with you long term. We'll discuss arrangements and financial support when situation stabilizes. Don't try to contact me. I'll reach out when able. I stared at the message, and I realized this was it. This was her abandoning them in writing, not a temporary childcare arrangement, not a business trip that ran long-term placement. I immediately forwarded the message to Patricia and Marcus. "This is good," Patricia said when she called. "Very good. Combined with everything else, this establishes a pattern of permanent abandonment. She's explicitly saying she's not planning to resume custody. So what do we do now? Now we file for emergency custody. We present all the evidence we've gathered: her unfitness as a parent, the attempted illegal adoption, the permanent relocation to Texas, this text message establishing abandonment. We ask the court to grant you temporary custody while we build towards permanent custody and potential termination of her parental rights." How long will it take? The emergency hearing should happen within a few weeks. If we're successful, you'll have temporary legal custody while the case proceeds. But the full case, proving permanent abandonment and getting full custody, that could take a year or more. And if she fights it? Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then it gets complicated and expensive. But Eleanor, based on everything you've told me, I don't think she will. I think she wants to be rid of them. I think she'll gladly sign away her rights if it means she can move on with her new life without the burden of these children hanging over her. Then let's file. Let's make this official. The paperwork was filed on November 1st, 2011, exactly 2 months after Cassandra had left the boys with me. Emergency petition for temporary custody based on parental abandonment and unfitness. The hearing was scheduled for November 15th, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope stirring in my chest. Hope that I could protect my grandsons.
The emergency custody hearing took place on November 15, 2011, in Buncombe County Family Court. I sat at a table with Patricia Langford, my hands trembling despite my best efforts to appear calm. Across the aisle, 3 empty chairs sat waiting, spaces reserved for Cassandra, Garrett, and their attorney, if they chose to appear. Judge Margaret Chen, a woman in her early 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, entered at exactly 9 a.m. We all rose as she took her seat behind the bench. "Please be seated," she said, opening the file in front of her. "We're here for an emergency petition for temporary custody, case number 2011-FC4782. Eleanor Whitmore petitioning for custody of minor children Jasper Thomas Sterling and Silas James Sterling, currently aged 3 years. I see the respondents, Cassandra and Garrett Sterling, are not present?" "No, Your Honor," Patricia said, standing. "Despite being properly served with notice of this hearing, neither respondent has appeared or retained counsel to represent them." Judge Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's highly unusual in a custody matter. Very well. Miss Langford, please present your case." For the next hour, Patricia laid out everything we'd discovered: the autism diagnosis and Cassandra's rejection of her children, the insufficient therapy and parental neglect documented by medical professionals, Isabel's testimony about the cold, distant parenting, the dissolved business and sold house, the relocation to Texas under false pretenses, and finally the attempted sale of the children to the Martinez family in Mexico. Judge Chen's expression grew increasingly severe as Patricia presented the evidence: the emails, the wire transfer records, the correspondence about pricing children like merchandise. "Your Honor," Patricia said, "this isn't a case of a struggling parent who needs support. This is a case of deliberate, calculated abandonment by parents who viewed their autistic children as financial burdens and attempted to sell them illegally. When that sale fell through, they simply left the children with Mrs. Whitmore and started a new life in another state, telling people their children had died." "Miss Langford," Judge Chen said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger, "are you telling me that these parents attempted to engage in human trafficking of their own children?" "Yes, Your Honor, that's exactly what I'm telling you." Judge Chen was silent for a long moment, reading through the evidence Patricia had submitted. Finally, she looked up at me. "Miss Whitmore, please approach the bench." I stood on shaking legs and walked forward, feeling the weight of this moment crushing down on me. "Miss Whitmore," Judge Chen said, her voice gentler now, "these boys have been in your care for approximately 10 weeks. How have they been doing?" "They've been thriving, Your Honor," my voice steadier than I felt. "Jasper's meltdowns have decreased significantly. Silas is making more eye contact and responding to his name more consistently. They're both sleeping better, eating better, and their therapists have reported noticeable progress since they came to live with me." "And you're 60 years old, is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor. These boys will need care well into adulthood. They have significant special needs. You understand that taking custody means committing to potentially decades of intensive caregiving?"
I met her eyes directly. "Your Honor, I've already committed to them. From the moment they were born, I've loved them unconditionally. I'm not young, but I'm healthy, and I have support. More importantly, I can give them what their parents never could: love, stability, and the absolute certainty that they are wanted and valued." Judge Chen nodded slowly. "Miss Whitmore, based on the evidence presented today, particularly the attempted illegal adoption and the subsequent abandonment, I am granting you emergency temporary custody of Jasper and Silas Sterling effective immediately." Relief flooded through me so powerfully that I had to grip the bench to stay upright. "Furthermore," Judge Chen continued, "I am ordering that Cassandra and Garrett Sterling be served with notice to show cause why their parental rights should not be terminated. They have 30 days to respond and appear before this court. If they fail to do so, I will proceed with termination proceedings in their absence. Miss Langford, please prepare the appropriate orders." "Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor." As we left the courthouse, Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. "Eleanor, you did it. Those boys are legally yours now, at least temporarily." "What happens if Cassandra and Garrett don't respond?" I asked. "Then, in 30 days, we move forward with permanent termination of their parental rights. Given the evidence and their complete abandonment, the judge will almost certainly grant it. They'll have no legal claim to those boys ever again." "And if they do respond?" Patricia's expression grew serious. "Then we fight. But honestly, Eleanor, I don't think they will. I think they want to be rid of this problem. Fighting for custody would mean admitting what they tried to do, facing potential criminal charges for the attempted illegal adoption. I think they'll let you have the boys without a fight." She was right. 30 days passed with no response from Cassandra or Garrett. Not a call, not a letter, not an attorney filing papers on their behalf. Complete silence. On December 20th, 2011, Judge Chen signed the order terminating Cassandra and Garrett Sterling's parental rights to Jasper and Silas Sterling. On January 15th, 2012, she signed the adoption decree making me their legal mother. At 60 years old, I became a mother again. This time to 2 beautiful 3-year-old boys who needed me more than anything in the world.
The years that followed were the hardest and most rewarding of my life. Raising 2 autistic boys as a single grandmother in her 60s was exhausting, expensive, and overwhelming. There were days I cried from sheer exhaustion, nights I lay awake worrying about money and the future. Moments when I wondered if I was strong enough to do this. But there were also triumphs. Jasper's first full sentence at age 5. Silas making eye contact and smiling at age 6. Both boys learning to read, to communicate, to navigate a world that wasn't always kind to children who were different. I mortgaged my cottage to pay for their therapy. I worked until I was 68, finally retiring only when my arthritis made transcription work impossible. We lived frugally, carefully, making every dollar stretch. The boys wore second-hand clothes and we ate simple meals, but they had what mattered: intensive therapy, good medical care, educational support, and love. Marcus Chen became a friend, checking in on us regularly even after his investigation ended. Patricia Langford provided legal advice pro bono whenever we needed it. Ruth Kowalski, my neighbor, became like a grandmother to the boys, helping with childcare and providing respite when I needed to breathe. The boys attended special education programs through elementary and middle school. They struggled, certainly. The social demands were difficult, the academic work challenging, the sensory environment often overwhelming, but they persevered, and so did I. By the time they were teenagers, both boys had developed intense interests that became pathways to independence.
Jasper became obsessed with computers and coding, spending hours writing programs and building websites. Silas discovered a gift for mathematics and pattern recognition that bordered on genius. When they turned 16, I helped them apply for services through North Carolina's vocational rehabilitation program. When they were 18, they enrolled in community college programs designed for students with autism. Jasper studied computer science, Silas studied accounting. They graduated with associate's degrees at 21. Both found jobs. Jasper as a junior programmer at a local tech company, Silas as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. They moved into supported living apartment together, learning to manage their own lives with coaching support. I watched them grow into young men I was impossibly proud of. They would always need some level of support, help with complex social situations, assistance with major life decisions, backup when they became overwhelmed. But they were independent in ways that Cassandra had insisted would be impossible. They had jobs. They had their own apartment. They had lives worth living. And they knew the truth. When they turned 18, I'd sat them down and told them everything. About their biological mother who'd abandoned them. About the attempted sale. About how I'd fought for them and won. They deserved to know their story, painful as it was. Jasper had been angry at first, struggling to process the rejection. Silas had been more matter-of-fact, his autism making it easier to accept the information without emotional turmoil. But both boys had hugged me afterward and thanked me for choosing them, for fighting for them, for loving them when their biological parents couldn't. "You're our real mom," Jasper had said, his voice firm despite his usual difficulty with emotional expression. "Biology doesn't matter. You're the one who was there. You're the one who loved us." Those words sustained me through the difficult years that followed. The heart surgery I needed at 70, the financial struggles, the exhaustion of aging while still parenting young adults who needed support. But through it all, I never regretted my choice, not for a single moment. In 2023, 12 years after I'd been granted custody, Jasper came to visit me one Sunday afternoon with unusual excitement in his eyes. "Mom," he said, he'd started calling me Mom instead of Grandma years ago, "I found something about Cassandra." My heart clenched at the name. I rarely thought about my biological daughter anymore, having compartmentalized that grief and betrayal years ago. "What did you find?" "She has a company, a big one in Austin, Texas. It's called Sterling Tech Solutions." I felt the blood drain from my face. Sterling? But Garrett's family... "She remarried," Jasper explained, pulling out his laptop. "After she and Garrett divorced in 2015, she married a man named Marcus Sterling, no relation to Garrett, apparently, and took his name, and they built this huge tech consulting firm together. It's worth millions, Mom, like hundreds of millions." He showed me the website. There was Cassandra, older now, but still beautiful, wearing an expensive suit and a practiced smile. The About Us page described Sterling Tech Solutions as a premier technology consulting firm specializing in digital transformation and business optimization. The company had over 500 employees, offices in 6 states, and an impressive client list of Fortune 500 companies. My daughter, the woman who'd tried to sell her autistic sons for $100,000, was now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "There's more," Silas said quietly. He'd been sitting silently in the corner, but now he came forward with his own laptop. "I've been researching the company's financial structure. Sterling Tech Solutions went public last year. Initial public offering. Cassandra owns 35% of the company stock, currently valued at approximately $280 million. I stared at him, processing the number. $280 million, while I'd been mortgaging my home and counting every penny to give Jasper and Silas the therapy they needed. Cassandra had been building a fortune. "Mom," Jasper said carefully, "we're adults now. We have rights. And we were thinking, shouldn't she face consequences for what she did? Shouldn't there be some kind of accountability?
I looked at my boys, 25 years old now, intelligent and thoughtful young men who'd overcome so much. What are you suggesting? We want to tell our story, Jasper said, publicly. We want people to know what she did, who she really is behind that corporate success story. It could destroy everything she's built, I warned. Her company, her reputation, her new life. Are you sure you want to do that? Silas spoke up, his voice precise and emotionless in the way that was typical for him. She attempted to sell us illegally. She abandoned us when the sale failed. She built her fortune while you struggled to pay for our care. She deserves to face the consequences of her actions. And legally, we're entitled to make our story public. She can't stop us. I thought about it for a long moment. Part of me wanted to leave the past buried, to let Cassandra live with whatever guilt or lack thereof she felt. But another part, the part that remembered scrubbing together money for their therapy, the part that remembered the fear and exhaustion of those early years, wanted justice. If we do this, I said slowly, we do it right. We don't just tell the story, we make sure there are real consequences, financial consequences, since that's what she values most. What do you mean? Jasper asked. An idea was forming in my mind, audacious and possibly impossible, but compelling. Marcus Chen, the private investigator who helped us 12 years ago, he's still in business. What if we hire him again? What if we build a case, not criminal necessarily, since too much time has passed for that, but civil? What if we sue her for the cost of raising you, for the therapy, the medical care, the support you needed that she refused to provide? Patricia Langford, who I called the next day, was intrigued by the idea. It's creative, she admitted. North Carolina does allow for retroactive child support claims in some circumstances, and given that you have documentation of her abandonment and the termination of parental rights, you might have grounds for a substantial claim. How substantial? Well, let's calculate. Intensive autism therapy for 2 children over 15 years, that's easily $1 million in costs, probably more. Add medical expenses, educational support, housing, food, everything else. We could be looking at a claim of several $1,000,000, maybe more if we can argue emotional damages. But would we win? Maybe. It depends on the judge, the jurisdiction, how well we present the case. But Eleanor, even if we don't win financially, the publicity alone would be devastating to her. A lawsuit like this would make national news. Tech CEO accused of trying to sell autistic sons. That's a headline that would destroy her reputation. I don't want to destroy her out of spite, I said carefully. I want accountability. I want her to face what she did. And if there are financial consequences that help Jasper and Silas secure their futures, that's justice. Then let's do it, Patricia said. Let's build the case. We filed the lawsuit in March 2023 in Buncombe County Superior Court. The complaint was comprehensive and damning: abandonment, attempted human trafficking, failure to provide necessary care for special needs children, emotional distress, and a claim for retroactive child support and damages totaling $8.5 million. The story broke in the local Asheville news first, then spread rapidly. Within a week, it was national news. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, they all covered it. Tech CEO accused of trying to sell autistic sons, read the headlines. Cassandra's carefully constructed life began to crumble almost immediately. Sterling Tech Solutions' stock price dropped 40% in 2 days. Major clients put contracts under review. Her business partner, the second Marcus Sterling she'd married, filed for divorce and publicly distanced himself from her actions. She hired a team of expensive lawyers who tried every tactic to dismiss the case.
They argued the statute of limitations had passed. They claimed I'd agreed to take custody voluntarily, negating any support obligations. They attacked my credibility, suggesting I was a bitter ex-mother-in-law seeking revenge. But Patricia was brilliant. She presented the emails about the attempted sale. She presented testimony from Isabel, from the therapists, from Dr. Patel. She presented financial records showing exactly how much I'd spent over 15 years while Cassandra built her fortune. She presented Jasper and Silas themselves, articulate, intelligent young men who testified calmly about their abandonment and the impact on their lives. The case went to trial in September 2023. It lasted 3 weeks. Every day, more devastating evidence emerged. The courtroom was packed with reporters, with advocates for children with special needs, with people who'd followed the story and wanted to see justice served. On October 12, 2023, the jury returned their verdict in favor of the plaintiffs on all counts. They awarded us $6.2 million in damages, less than we'd asked for, but still a substantial sum. The judge added another $2 million in punitive damages, stating that Cassandra's actions had been so egregious, so callous, and so calculated that additional punishment is warranted to deter similar conduct. $8.2 million. Enough to secure Jasper and Silas's futures, to pay for whatever support they'd need throughout their lives, to compensate me for the years of struggle and sacrifice. But more than the money, there was accountability. Cassandra had been forced to face what she'd done, forced to see the sons she'd discarded thriving despite her betrayal, forced to lose everything she'd built through the exposure of her crimes.
The money began to transfer in November 2023, liquidated from Cassandra's stock holdings and assets. But something strange happened in December, something none of us had anticipated. Sterling Tech Solutions, now distanced from Cassandra and hemorrhaging clients in value, was put up for sale by the board of directors. They needed to salvage what they could from the wreckage of the scandal. Silas, who'd been following the company's financials obsessively, came to me with a wild idea. "Mom," he said, "the company's worth has dropped to about $150 million. We have $8.2 million from the settlement. If we could find investors, partners, financing, we could buy it." "Buy what?" I asked, confused. "Sterling Tech Solutions. We could buy the company. Jasper's a programmer. I'm an accountant. We know people in the tech world through Jasper's work. With the right team, the right leadership, we could rebuild it. We could turn the company Cassandra built on our blood money into something good, something that employs and supports people with autism and other disabilities." It was audacious. It was probably impossible, but Jasper was excited about it too, his mind already racing with possibilities. "We could create a tech company that prioritizes neurodivergent employees," Jasper said, his words tumbling out quickly. "We could prove that autistic people can succeed in tech, can lead companies, can build something meaningful. We could take what she tried to use to escape us and turn it into our legacy." I thought about how far these boys had come, from 3-year-olds that their mother had tried to sell to young men plotting to buy her company out from under her. "Let's talk to Patricia," I said. "Let's see if it's even possible." It turned out to be possible. Barely. With the settlement money as a down payment, with investors who believed in the mission, with a complex financing structure that Patricia and Silas negotiated, we were able to put together an offer. In February 2024, the sale went through. Jasper and Silas Sterling became the co-owners of Sterling Tech Solutions, with a mission to transform it into a neurodiversity-focused tech consulting firm that employed and championed workers on the autism spectrum. The irony was perfect. The company Cassandra had built while abandoning her autistic sons was now owned by those same sons, rebuilt as a beacon for neurodivergent talent. It's now December 2024, and I'm 72 years old. I sit on the board of Sterling Tech Solutions, mostly in an advisory role, while Jasper and Silas run the day-to-day operations with their exceptional leadership team. The company has thrived under their direction. They've pioneered new hiring practices that recognize the unique strengths of autistic workers. They've created sensory-friendly work environments. They've become advocates for disability rights in the tech industry. More importantly, they've shown the world that the children Cassandra tried to throw away because they weren't normal are extraordinary in their own right. Last month, Jasper and Silas were featured on the cover of Wired magazine, the autistic brothers who bought their mother's company and transformed tech culture. The article told the whole story: the abandonment, the lawsuit, the acquisition, the transformation. It went viral. Millions of people read it, and the response was overwhelmingly supportive. Parents of autistic children writing to thank them for being role models, autistic adults writing to share their own stories, businesses asking how they could implement similar neurodiversity initiatives. As for Cassandra, I heard she declared bankruptcy and moved somewhere in Arizona, living a quiet life, far from the spotlight. Garrett, her first husband, died in 2020 from a heart attack. His obituary mentioned no children. His family never acknowledged Jasper and Silas, not even after they became successful. But that's fine. We don't need their acknowledgement. We don't need anything from them. I look at my boys, men now, really, successful and independent, and I feel a peace I never thought I'd find. The last 12 years were hard, but they led to this: justice, vindication, and the ultimate proof that love and determination can overcome even the cruelest betrayals. Jasper and Silas weren't just survivors of their mother's abandonment, they became the architects of their own justice, taking the very thing she'd built while rejecting them and transforming it into something beautiful. Sometimes I think about calling Cassandra, telling her what her sons have accomplished, rubbing it in. But I don't. The best revenge isn't cruelty. It's living well, thriving, building something meaningful from the ashes of what was meant to destroy you. My grandsons, my sons, did exactly that, and I got to witness every moment of their triumph.